What if events went differently in Captain America Civil War? What if the Dark Knight was in Civil War? What if the Dark Knight was in the MCU? Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to yet another crossover video where we're going to be crossing paths with the Dark Knight in the MCU timeline, starting off in Avengers Civil War. Or Captain America Civil War for that matter, but I mean, I'm very hyped, but welcome back, watchers of the multiverse, to yet another video. And this video it's not really a requested video, it's something that I've wanted to do ever since I did What If the Dark Knight Was in Avengers 2012, but I ended that one with a really sad note, and this one I'm hoping is going to redeem itself. I think it's a lot better quality than the previous version of the Dark Knight in the MCU, because that version of events really did not go well. So I don't know if you guys would like to see that one, but it's not a continuation. This is a completely new episode. But that being said, my fellow watchers, if you guys would like to show your support, I would highly recommend that you check out the Substack as well as the Patreon, as there's tons of exclusive perks and updates. But again, thank you so much for tuning in, and grab some popcorn, because things are going to go insane. Well, it seems that our favorite playboy billionaire has gotten lost in another universe. After a mission goes terribly wrong in Nigeria, the Avengers are informed that the United Nations will pass on the Sokovia Accords, which will allow the UN to oversee the team's actions. This soon divides the Avengers, as some agree with the government's decision, while others do not. Where will Batman stand in this war between heroes? Location: Cambridge, Massachusetts, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Time: 3:12 p.m. Driving his black Lamborghini down the streets of Cambridge, wealthy businessman Bruce Wayne finally made it to his destination, MIT. Although he was a Princeton man despite having dropped out, Bruce felt some nostalgia from seeing the university's campus. Pulling into the parking lot, the man quickly parked his car and moved to get out. But before doing so, the billionaire stopped to examine the letter he placed on the passenger seat. Since the institute was so large, Bruce wanted to make sure he was heading to the right building. About a week ago, Mr. Wayne received the letter, which was an invitation to a special event being held today at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And the invite was from none other than New York's own genius, billionaire, playboy, and philanthropist Tony Stark. It did come as a surprise. Bruce had expected to meet Mr. Stark at some point. After all, the two had a lot in common. But there were a few of Tony's past actions that did not sit well with Bruce. The biggest one being Stark revealing himself to be the hero Iron Man for the whole world. How idiotic could someone possibly be to do something like that? And not to mention the stunt Tony pulled a year ago when he publicly taunted the Mandarin and gave away his home address. Bruce shook his head at the memory. He had to walk for a while, but Mr. Wayne finally made it to the Kresge Auditorium, which was where the demonstration would take place. He took a moment to admire the auditorium's exterior, which had a unique shell-like shape, with the roof being made of stainless steel and glass windows composing most of the small building. Walking through the entrance, Mr. Wayne was met with a pair of double doors, and after taking a moment to straighten out his suit, the owner of Wayne Enterprises had to look presentable at all times, right? Bruce entered the auditorium, making sure to be as quiet as possible, since the presentation had started a few minutes ago. He would have been here earlier, but there was an important business matter he had to attend to, and he had not expected it to take so long. Fortunately, the businessman had not missed much, and he looked onto the stage to see it had been set up as the inside of a house. Fancy furniture, decorations, and even a beautiful piano could be seen. But what really caught Bruce's attention was the person sitting at the piano, playing it and singing a song that the man recognized almost immediately. At the piano, there was an older woman with her hair tied back into a low bun and a pearl necklace hanging around her neck. She was singing a song called Try to Remember, a piece Bruce knew from his mother, Martha Wayne. It was a song the woman would often hum around Wayne Manor when she was still alive. Now her son found himself following along with the woman on the stage, humming the song just as his mother did all those years ago. Soon enough, an old man entered the room wearing a dark gray suit and tie, and he had short white hair with a mustache. He stomped over to the couch that was beside the woman, who Mr. Wayne presumed to be the man's wife, and snatched a red blanket from it. Because the woman was sitting right in front of the couch, Bruce did not see what, or rather, who was laying on the couch. But when the blanket was taken, the billionaire was shocked to see Mr. Stark. However, Tony looked very good for his age, very youthful for a man in his 40s. This was it, Bruce thought to himself. This was Tony's newest technology at work. After a short conversation between the young Tony and his parents, Howard and Maria Stark, time seemed to stop as Tony leaned against the wall, an unreadable expression on his face, while he watched his parents leave. Behind him, another figure had emerged seemingly out of nowhere, his hands clasped in front of him, and his eyes protected by glasses. Here was the host of today's presentation, the real Tony Stark. Stark joked about having to change the name for the technology he just used to create the holographic image of his childhood home and his parents. The full name for the tech is binarily augmented retro framing, but the acronym for it is, unfortunately, BARF. He knew it was immature, but even Bruce had to chuckle at the name. Tony briefly explained what BARF does, and once he was finished with that, he followed it with a speech about a new grant he was introducing for MIT's students. The grant would provide the students with proper funding for their inventions. It was certainly something Mr. Wayne could get behind, and he was glad to see Tony using his wealth for such a worthy cause. There was a round of applause as Mr. Stark completed his speech, and Bruce assumed the event was almost over. Tony smiled at the crowd, reveling in the applause, but his smile soon disappeared as he stared out into the audience. Bruce could not see it from where he was sitting, but Tony was actually staring at a script provided for him by a teleprompter. On it were the words, "Now I would like to introduce the head of the foundation, Pepper Potts." Not many people were aware of this, but Mr. Stark and Ms. Potts were no longer in a relationship because Tony had refused to stop being Iron Man. So, seeing the woman's name on the teleprompter must have been hard on Tony, but the man quickly regained his composure and ended the presentation with a simple, "Go break some eggs," encouraging the students to follow their dreams. Everyone immediately stood from their seats and began to exit the auditorium, with Bruce being one of the first to leave. He made his way around the auditorium and soon saw Tony leaving the auditorium from a back door. The man looked as though he was heading into the bathroom across the hall, but instead he walked further down the hallway. Bruce was about to call out to Mr. Stark, but he stopped himself when he noticed another person in the hall, an African-American woman wearing all black. Did Stark know her? Location? New York. Avengers compound. Time: 4:21 p.m. When Tony Stark had asked him to join their meeting to discuss the Sokovia Accords, Bruce was not expecting, well, this. Complete and utter chaos as the Avengers voiced their opinions on the matter. Lieutenant James Rhodes, or Rhodey as Tony called him, was getting especially loud with Sam Wilson, aka Captain Falcon. Rhodey stood up for General Thaddeus Ross, the man who informed the Avengers of the Accords, saying the general had a Congressional Medal of Honor, which was one more than Sam had, Rhodes added. In response to the lieutenant's comment, Sam pointed out how Rhodey was trying to play both sides. But in this sort of situation, Rhodey was going to have to choose a side at some point. Before things escalated further, Vision, an android created by the villain Ultron, decided to offer his insight on things. When he was finished, it honestly sounded like he was blaming the team for the rise in conflicts since Tony revealed himself as Iron Man. But the android was simply trying to say that there may be causality as their strength invites challenge. Challenge incites conflict, and conflict breeds catastrophe. Rhodey fully agreed with Vision's words. During this whole conversation, S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Natasha Romanoff, known to most as Black Widow, noticed that Tony was being uncharacteristically quiet. Placing down the physical copy of the Sokovia Accords he was looking over, Steve Rogers, or Captain America, commented that Stark had already made up his mind on the matter. Of course, Bruce knew the captain was right, since Stark had discussed his choice a little before the team's meeting with Ross. But the CEO of Stark Industries denied the accusation, claiming he was nursing an electromagnetic headache, and he stood up from the couch that he was sharing with Romanoff. While preparing a cup of coffee, Tony pointed a finger at Mr. Wayne, finally addressing the elephant in the room. It was then that Sam asked Stark why he brought basically a stranger to their meeting. Tony explained how Bruce works closely with the superhero Batman, a vigilante from the city of Gotham. Most of the Avengers, such as Steve and Sam, have never heard of this Batman before, but Bruce was not surprised. After all, he, Batman of course, was someone who stayed in the shadows and was known to most as nothing but an urban legend. Anyway, since he had experience working alongside heroes, Tony believed that Bruce's insight would be very helpful, and he insisted that the man join their meeting. So, now with all eyes on him, Mr. Wayne spoke up. Location: Avengers compound. Time: 8:46 p.m. Trapped within the compound, Wanda Maximoff was bored out of her mind, and with her jailer Vision watching her every move, the girl could not walk 2 steps out of the building before he forced her back inside. Now she was just staring out a window, hoping that something exciting would happen. As if to answer her prayers, Wanda soon witnessed an explosion go off in the distance, the woods surrounding it slowly catching fire. Vision was by Wanda's side in a millisecond, as he was concerned about her safety. But once the android saw she was fine, Vision's main priority was finding out who or what caused that explosion. Vision asked that Wanda stay put while he investigates, and he soon left the girl alone in her room once again. Well, that is what he thought. Wanda, however, was aware of another's presence with her, and thinking quickly, she grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter using her telekinetic powers. She then threw the knife towards the intruder's head, but stopped it before it could actually pierce through their skull. Not that the newcomer was worried about that. Wanda's eyes widened when she saw who had paid her a visit. Not a fellow Avenger, not even a government agent, which would have made sense seeing as Wanda was in the country illegally. It was one of the main reasons why Stark had confined her to the Avengers compound. This guy, however, was certainly not working for the government. With their black and gray body armor and bulletproof cowl, which had 2 pointed ears on top of it, the man looked like a creature of the night. A bat, to be specific. With his finger, the man shoved aside the knife and joked that he should have knocked. Wanda slowly approached the strange man, recognizing him as the one they called Batman. She knew the vigilante worked in Gotham, so she had to wonder what Batman was doing here of all places. Knowing what the girl was thinking, Batman explained that after the incident with the signing of the Sokovia Accords, He has not been having the best time either. The Caped Crusader himself was against it, because that would mean he would also be under the United Nations' jurisdiction, and that in turn would mean Batman would have to reveal his secret identity, which he absolutely refuses to do. Before they began their escape, Batman tossed two of his batarangs, one to his left and the other to his right. Wanda watched but was genuinely confused as to what the vigilante was doing, but Batman quickly grabbed the girl's hand, telling her that they needed to hurry. The explosion was not going to keep Vision busy for long. And speaking of the devil, as the two were walking away, the android phased through the wall and called out to Batman, stating the hero was trespassing. Batman stepped in front of Wanda to keep some distance between her and Vision. The vigilante was aware that Vision was an android with artificial intelligence, and his actions were based on logic rather than emotion. Batman knew he would not be able to convince Vision to join him. As he approached Batman and Wanda, Vision passed the two batarangs the Caped Crusader threw just moments before, and Vision was temporarily stopped by the weapons, as they produced an electric shock. The android made it clear that the trap would not stop him forever, which Batman was already aware of. But there was one thing Vision did not account for, and she was standing right behind Batman. Batman glanced over his shoulder, and with one look into his eyes, Wanda knew what the vigilante was thinking. She shook her head and slowly backed away from Batman. She refused to harm Vision in any way, even if he was trying to keep them from leaving. But as she was thinking that, Vision broke free of the electricity and rushed straight towards Batman. The android then grabbed Batman by his throat and lifted him into the air. With the pressure Vision was placing onto his trachea, Batman could already see black dots in his eyesight. Even so, the Caped Crusader was rather calm despite his current situation, and his focus was still on Wanda. He tried to convince the girl to act and push aside her feelings for the greater good. If they do not escape now, then the two will surely be locked up for attempting to flee. And not only that, but without their help, Captain America and his team may not be able to stop the criminal mastermind Zemo from awakening the other Winter Soldiers like Cap's friend, Bucky Barnes. The whole world was at stake, and it was time Wanda made her choice before it was too late. Circling Vision and Batman, Wanda summoned a sphere of chaotic crimson energy into her hands and pleaded with the android to stop. She stated that she would be leaving the compound with Batman, but Vision replied saying he would not let her do that. With that, Wanda was forced to use her abilities on her friend, and the golden stone on Vision's forehead soon turned red. The girl had temporarily taken control of Vision, and she mentally commanded for the android to release Batman. Once he was free, the Caped Crusader raised his hand to his neck, massaging it, knowing that a bruise had formed around it. The vigilante watched as a red aura engulfed Vision's form, and he slowly fell to his knees, the ground cracking beneath him. The android's eyes remained only on Wanda, and he told her that if she went down this path, everyone would remain afraid of her. Wanda had already accepted she would be feared and knows she cannot control the fears of others, only her own. And with one final push, the girl sent Vision crashing into the floors of the compound, falling deep into the earth until his body was consumed by darkness. Location: Berlin, Germany. Leipzig-Halle Airport. Time: 2:31 p.m. As he approached a helicopter, Captain America and Batman were approached by Tony and Rhodes, both in their metal suits, now with Tony and Mark Sexlaflyn's Iron Man suit, and Rhodes wearing his War Machine armor. Stark threw a small object onto the helicopter, and the vehicle immediately burst into flames soon after. Honestly, Batman wished he had an aircraft that could help the team flee Berlin, but the Bat was still under construction, and it was only a two-seater. They were going to need much more room if they were all going to escape together. Getting down to business, Iron Man explained that General Ross had given him 36 hours to turn in Cap, Batman, and the rest of their crew, but that was 24 hours ago, leaving only 12 hours for Iron Man to fulfill his end of the deal. Captain America tried to convince his former ally that he was after the wrong man, but Iron Man shot back that the captain's judgment was clouded due to his friendship with Bucky. Iron Man then turned to Batman, saying he was disappointed the vigilante had chosen the wrong side, when Bruce Wayne seemed to understand that the Accords were needed. If only he knew. Black Panther soon appeared in the airport, as well along with Black Widow, who looked incredibly guilty. She really did not want to fight Cap or those on his team because they were still her friends, despite their current differences in opinion, if possible, which she knew was very unlikely. Widow wanted this ordeal to be solved peacefully. Or in other words, she wanted to make sure everyone got out of this alive. But as Black Widow was speaking to Captain America, Batman could feel another presence somewhere nearby. Did Iron Man plan a surprise attack? Before anyone could act, the caped Crusader pulled out two of his batarangs, spun around and tossed his weapons, just as Iron Man shouted the word Underoos. Out of nowhere, someone literally swung into action using web. He barely dodged the batarangs, flipping to avoid the projectiles, and he soon landed on a nearby baggage cart. Recognizing the red and blue suit, Batman has seen this newer superhero in multiple videos across the internet. What did they call him? Spiderling? Spider-Boy? The vigilante's question was answered by the newcomer, who introduced himself as Spider-Man. He was practically fangirling as he spoke to Batman, saying that he was a huge fan and asked if he could get an autographed Batarang. Iron Man face-palmed himself and War Machine just shook his head, asking Tony if he still thought bringing the kid was a good idea. But Iron Man told his best friend that Spider-Man had potential, and even though he constantly ran his mouth, the kid is useful. Batman, however, could not believe they would resort to having children involved in this dispute. As if the caped Crusader would ever allow a child to fight alongside him, knowing how dangerous it would be. Maybe in another lifetime, but not this one. Location: Siberia, Russia, Hydra facility. Time: 5:51 a.m. This was it. This was all part of Helmut Zemo's plan to break the Avengers apart, and he had succeeded. Batman slowly walked towards, who was busy listening to a voicemail from his late wife. Hearing her voice brought some comfort to Zemo, but he knew deep down he wanted her to be here by his side, to see her, to feel her. Knowing the terrorist was no longer a threat, at least now that he got what he wanted, Batman took a seat beside Zemo. Zemo offered no protest to the action, and remained silent, until Batman asked him if it was worth it. All the people the Sokovian hurt, was their pain worth it, just so he could get his revenge? Batman did his own research on Zemo and knew how the man's family was killed during Ultron's attack a year ago. His own wife and son. Batman knew that pain, the pain of losing those closest to you. Sighing, the vigilante began to tell Zemo how his own parents were murdered when he was a child, shot dead right in front of him. He watched as they bled out, their lifeless eyes staring back at him, until the police arrived and took their bodies away. But even as his parents were placed in body bags, he could still feel their cold gazes on him. Ever since that night, Batman vowed to find the one responsible for their deaths, and to make sure no one else suffered like he did. And one day, he finally found them, his parents' murderer, walking along the streets without a care in the world. Genuinely interested in Batman's story, Zemo asked if he took revenge on the killer. Batman answered, but it was not the answer Zemo was expecting. The vigilante told Zemo that he thought about it, He thought about it long and hard as he watched the murderer, a man the caped crusader will just refer to as Joe, stroll down the sidewalk late one night. Batman could have struck the man down at any time, and no one would have known. But then, wouldn't that make Batman a killer as well? A cold-blooded murderer just like Joe? No. Batman would not let himself sink so low. And with that in mind, the vigilante allowed Joe to live another day. It was hard, but it was the right thing to do. Location, Avengers compound. Time, 7:01 p.m. Walking into an office, Bruce Wayne smiled when he saw Tony Stark, who was sitting at his desk with a piece of paper in his hands. A letter. Bruce was aware of who sent the letter and its contents, but acted as though he knew nothing and asked Tony what he was reading. Stark quickly folded the paper and placed it in a drawer, saying it was nothing important. Nodding, Bruce then asked how Tony was feeling, seeing the black eye his fellow billionaire now bore. Tony could feel the other staring at the injury, and he waved a dismissive hand, while claiming he was fine. But Mr. Wayne knew that was not the case. There was no way that after all that has happened recently, Stark was fine. Keeping a straight face, Bruce stood beside Tony, and with a bit of hesitation, patted his comrade on the back. The gesture came out awkward rather than comforting, but in his mind, Stark did appreciate the thought. He really needed a friend right now. And that is going to be it for this brand new Marvel and DC crossover video. Now, this series will have a part 2. We're going to be going with Avengers Infinity War by showcasing what if the Dark Knight was in Avengers Infinity War. What if Batman was, teaming up with Tony, Captain America, and maybe even fighting Thanos. Like, there's so many different things that I want to play around with during, Batman being in Infinity War, because I feel like any version of Batman, there's so many different events that could unfold, and so using the Dark Knight version of Batman in Infinity War is going to be very interesting. But again, if you guys do enjoy these crossover videos and would like to see more, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on, so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the brand new video. Take care and have a fantastic day. Peace out.